Well, hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Rationalists of East Tennessee and the Atheist Society of Knoxville. And I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Joe Barnhart.
All right. And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, even in East Tennessee, you're not alone. Today we're going to discuss love, and I'll probably get this word wrong several times today, Eros and to Agape.
Agape,
All right. So this is a program about love, motivated by yesterday, Valentine's Day. Well,
over a few announcements, yeah.
There we go. We got some announcements
briefly
about the Atheist Society of Knoxville. Okay, coming up this evening at Barley's, right after the show, we'll be meeting for food and drink, and on Thursday, February 17th at the Cairo Cafe for more of the same. That starts later. That's 7 p.m. All right. Look for the silver-covered copy of The God Delusion on the table to find us there.
And we got the Rationalists of East Tennessee. They're meeting Sunday, February 20, at Knoxville's Community Meditation Center.
Well, it's a program about the center.
That's what it's about.
They're meeting at the regular place.
Oh, okay. The Pellissippi College.
It's an annex off the cafeteria in the Goins building.
Good room, plenty of parking place.
There we go.
And very, very interesting people, pleasant people, good discussions.
Sunday the 27th, we also have the dinner program, and it's about deconversion experiences. I found that kind of story interesting because that was different to me. I grew up non-theist, so I never went through that process. And we have one more slide here. Why don't we catch, for people who are out of town, if you tell them about the website, ctvknox.org, they'll be able to log in and watch the program from anywhere that you can get the internet.
Yeah, I mentioned the call-ins.
Oh, that's right. Please call in now.
Talk with us.
This is a call-in program.
We're going to talk about love today.
We're going to talk about love.
And if you remember, 1 Corinthians 13 is the famous passage in the New Testament. We want to get right into that because it's a beautiful passage. Whatever your religion, whether you're an atheist, a Christian, or a Jew, or an ancient Greek, this is a beautiful passage. The Apostle Paul has it in 1 Corinthians 13. Some think he borrowed the poem. Often writers borrowed from other writers in those days. We don't really have the original parts of the Bible. We only have copies from way back, but we don't have the originals. But anyhow, we want to get started with this right away.
Right.
If you have an announcement, we need to get that, because otherwise we need to move right into the...
All right, well, I was going to... all right, why don't you work with Corinthians there?
Well, okay, this is 1 Corinthians 13 starts... I'm using the King James translation because most of you might be familiar with it. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not love, I have become as a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And it simply means if we don't have love, and we're going to try to explain what we're talking about, then we're mostly noise. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, all understanding, and don't have love, then we're missing the main thing.
That's interesting. In the version of this Corinthians that I worked up off of the Skeptic's Annotated Guide to the Bible, it's interesting that they use the word charity, and they replaced it for love.
Yeah, that's the King James translation. You got three Greek words: eros, which could be translated passion, and philos, which is something like, well, you got Philadelphia, brotherly love is two words, and agape is a kind of giving, gracious love. It's the outgoing love that's in some ways unconditional, and it's what a mother and a father have for their children. It's that love that doesn't always just keep close records.
Okay.
Now, it's not the same as being naive and being taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
But it does mean that you don't simply go through life as if you were just bookkeeping all the time.
Okay. And so...
And it says then that...
I guess I can see why that maybe works in then with the translation to charity rather than love, which might be more like the Eros meaning.
Exactly. It's a good point.
Okay.
And notice what's very important in this passage, though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing.
Okay.
So, in fact, the last part of this, 1 Corinthians 13 says, now abides faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of all is love. Is love.
And I believe the Skeptics Annotated Bible translated it that way. Yeah, they still use charity.
Yeah, in the Greek, it's the greater of these is love. It's almost as if you put the other two together, and love is better than the two put together.
Still greater than?
It's a possible meaning of it. But notice says that though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, or give my body to be burned, but have not love, I'm nothing. And it says love is kind. And here's something very important. It is not. It does not
envy.
Envy is an incredibly destructive thing. It's different from jealousy. Envy means somebody has something or is something, and you want to replace them and pull them down. Whereas love appreciates the other person. It sees that other person as having worth, and you don't try to pull someone down. And the old King James is, it vaulteth not itself. Another way of saying it doesn't pole vault itself over people.
Oh, okay. And maybe another way to translate that might be that it doesn't try to elevate itself at the expense of others.
Yeah. Which raises a question. What's the difference, would you think, between humility and humiliation?
Humility is something, it's not transitive, it's an intransitive verb, whereas humiliation, you're humiliating something else, aren't you?
You humiliate somebody is really to shove them down. To have humility is to see yourself in perspective. It's not arrogance, and it's not humiliation.
Okay.
It's saying, well, I'm humble. For example, if someone says to me, as they could easily, Joe, you're not a very good automobile mechanic.
All right, I won't go there.
And that's not humiliating, you see. That's a fact. And so if I can handle that, then that's getting myself in a little perspective.
Okay.
Now, if I get arrogant and think that I'm the greatest at this, and I'm not, then that's not humility. Now, so humility is not underbidding everybody else's opinion of you.
Okay.
But it is trying to be accurate.
And understand your true limitations.
And your true abilities. And that's why other people sometimes can help you to get perspective, because sometimes we get ourselves, there are people who always underrate themselves, and then there are others sometimes who overrate. And humility is trying to get somewhere in the realm of reality.
All right.
And so that's what this love is about, is you see another person as he or she is, and yourself. And then you can relate.
All right, I got it. All right, do we have some more material here?
Well, it says it does not rejoice in iniquity, but in the truth.
Oh.
Now,
okay.
This is a very interesting passage. It doesn't mean, I think, that you say, I've got all the truth and I'm rejoicing in it. I think it's implying that truth is more than any one of us, or more than any community of us has. And so part of that is to rejoice in the truth means to rejoice in living an honest life and to seek more truth. And so that can include anywhere from being an honest man on the job, an honest woman at work, and a scientist at work trying to seek more and more truth, or a scholar trying to seek truth, or a mother trying to seek the truth from what their children are doing.
So you were saying that when you began the discussion of the Corinthians, that you said is Paul may have borrowed this. When you start talking about humility and knowing your own limitations, that strikes me as maybe a little similar to what Socrates would say about, he said something, I'm paraphrasing, something to the effect that, what he knew is that he knew nothing.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Socrates, because one of the dialogues of Plato about Socrates is called the Symposium, and that has a lot of what's called odes to love. Okay. And this is an ode to love, and it's as if this is taking a cue from Plato's dialogues, and developing this, and Paul incorporates it.
Well, and I guess that's what as you described it, I thought, wait a minute, it sounds like it could be inspired a little by Socrates.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Who never wrote anything, and we owe what we think we know about Socrates, I guess, to Plato's writing.
Plato, yeah.
Well, mostly Plato. I assume other people wrote about him. I guess I know that some of the Greek plays reference Socrates, sometimes in not flattering fashions as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. But let's talk more about love. What do you think? Is love a feeling? Now, when you're in love, you want to be in the presence of that person. And when that person is not present, you're thinking about that person. You're wondering about what they're doing. That's the feeling part. But love is more than feeling. It's intellectual, would you think? It's emotional, and it's moral.
Okay.
So if you love someone, what does that mean? What's coming across when you love someone? What would you guess?
I guess there's multiple things. There's the pleasure of being in the company of. There's the pleasure in perhaps learning from and sharing experiences with.
What do you want for that person?
I guess when I say sharing experiences, that the things that we enjoy, we want to share so that they can see and make enjoyment of that as well.
Yeah, so you want their happiness?
Yes, I may define an awful lot of happiness in terms of learning about things. That's my nature.
That's good. And you want their freedom.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and in fact, would you say that if you love someone, you may or may not give them flowers because they may not want flowers. Mm-hmm. So freedom as part of love means find out what makes them happy and secure. And that means learning, back to what you're talking about, learning from people. Mm-hmm. And sharing means, well, I remember my wife said to me once, and it stung me, and I'm glad. She said, "You don't have the foggiest notion how I feel about this." And that shocked me.
It can happen.
And that made me think, mind reading in marriage or any other good relationship, a good friendship, mind reading is a mistake. You have to learn from the other person.
Yes, you have to ask, yes. As you were speaking about that, I couldn't help but think of a reference to much more recent popular culture. The vocal artist Sting had two hit records with very opposite messages. One of them was, he was still with the group The Police, but the second one is actually almost an answer to that. The first one was about a very possessive love. Yeah. I'll be watching you.
Oh, yeah.
And the second one was, the chorus was, if you love someone, set them free. So, the message comes around even through recent popular culture again.
Yeah, I think it was the philosopher not Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard.
You're over my head at this point.
Well, it's just we're always over each other's head on nobody knows everything. But Kierkegaard decided not to marry. Okay. And when you study Kierkegaard's life, you think maybe that was a very loving thing. Now, why? I doubt that he could have lived that intimately with another person. Now, he knew how to love, but in a marriage relationship, I don't think he was capable of that. But he was capable of other kinds of very creative and wonderful relationships.
So what is he known for? I mean, all I've got really is a name for him. Maybe give me a little bio
Well, he is very well known for being one of the voices of existentialism.
Okay.
Fear and Trembling is an outstanding book
Okay.
he wrote. And, of course, that's had an influence anywhere from religion to psychiatry. And it's had a major impact in the 20th century, now in the 21st.
All right. Well, so here we are. We're on the Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee, another secular organization, and we've been quoting from the Bible. Mm-hmm. Perhaps some of the viewers can call in and tell us about their inspirations of life with regard to love and experience. And we've got, of course, both those Eros and
Agape.
Agape.
And
all right.
Philos, too.
Okay.
Love is a many splendored thing.
You mentioned briefly before you're referring to love, and there was kind of built into that an assumption that it was for another human. But of course, we all love our pets. Well, at least we hope people who have pets love them. I must say that I'm a cat fancier, and although I enjoy some of the small dogs as well, I tend to think that if I'm going to have a pet, I prefer it to be underfoot and with me. I can't imagine a dog that would be kept outside, because if it's going to be my companion, it's going to be there in the house with me.
Well, it's a good point. Dogs can love back. And I'm not that familiar with cats. We had some, but they were mostly outdoors and gone. But dogs, in some ways, are very forgiving.
There's a kind of a classic tension between dog lovers and cat lovers. I tend to say that when the cat gives you appreciation, you're grateful for it, because they can be sometimes independent.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Whereas dogs, they just ooze enthusiasm. When you come home, it's like the greatest thing in the world.
And that's and if you're lucky, that's what a good marriage relationship is. And so far, my wife and I have been married 57 years. We're still learning. But I must admit...
practice makes perfect.
I must admit, going home to see her it's just a joy.
All right.
There is a joy in love, and I like your word sharing. It's like I'm not good at jazz. But I taught at the university, was outstanding in jazz, and one of the musicians explained that a good jazz player has to learn to listen to the other players
that he's playing with. Okay.
And they interact. So it's polyphonic almost, and you got many voices, as it were, and they have to hear and then respond, and they make music. And that's what good relationships are. Sometimes you can work with a person like that, and they pick up their response. Part of a good loving relationship is picking up responsibilities. I mean, take the word responsibility. It's the ability to respond to the cues.
Okay.
And that's part of, in other words, love is try this. Love is something you can see. It's out there.
All right.
It's observable, and you can track it. It's behavior. It's loving behavior.
Perhaps if it's kept to itself, it's lost its value?
Well, if it's kept to itself, it's lost its value to someone else. Now let's talk about self-love for a minute.
All right. That's narcissism. That comes from another Greek legend.
Well, let me try this. I distinguish between self-love and self-indulgence of yourself. That passage in the Bible, love your neighbor as
yourself,
presupposes self-love.
Okay.
And what does this mean? It means at least this, you want happiness for yourself. You want security, and you want safety.
All right.
And you want all those things that make for a joyful life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing so sad as self-hatred. Now, it's one thing to pass judgment on some of our behavior and saying, well, we shouldn't have done that, or that was wrong.
Meaning having regret.
Yeah, and say, well, but that's different from saying you hate yourself. To hate yourself means you don't want to succeed. You don't want to be happy, and you don't want to have good relationships.
Sounds kind of pathological.
Well, it's self-destructive, and there are people, unfortunately, who get on a road of self-destruction. And part of a loving relationship, even with a person like that, is to try to help them to say, I'm okay, you're okay, which is the name of course, a very famous book. I'm okay, you're
right.
okay.
I've not read that one.
No, it's a marvelous book.
All right. Where are we in your notes here?
Okay, well, let's.
You mentioned the behavior.
Yeah, let's talk about. Say you're going to have thinking of marriage. You're a young person. And of course, you could be my age and still think of marriage if you don't have a spouse. So, I would like to say this and see what you think. Being in love is not a good foundation for later developing a marriage. Now let me try to.
All right, I'll challenge you on that. I'll need more amplification.
Okay. Well, being in love is it is more narcissistic in the sense that it's so thrilling to you.
Okay, so you're caught up in the moment in what you're feeling.
And it is thrilling, and it's a joy. And loving is, even when you don't have all the thrill all the time, you still care for that other person. And I've got a book here that I want some of our readers to get.
Hold up so we can see the cover and tell them the name and the title.
It's by a psychiatrist. I don't think you can see the title too well, but it's called The Sociopath Next Door. It's by a woman who is a psychiatrist, Martha Stout. She's at Harvard, and it's a great book.
I've read it. It was one of the books that the book club at the Rationalists of East Tennessee reviewed. It was very interesting and a little unsettling to read some of the material in that book.
It's very unsettling. One of the themes in the book is that a sociopath really doesn't know what love is. Now that's sad. That a sociopath, for some reason, did not bond well early. This is one of her theories. And that's why after the child is born, it is so important to hold that child, to sing to the child, to talk to it.
So that it develops the ability to bond and
trust.
And like other people.
Like other people.
And as I recall, there was a section where they talked about many children who were raised in an orphanage in, I'm going to say it was Romania. They had a huge population explosion because the Romanian dictator, whose name escapes me, had banned all forms of birth control and education about birth control. And they had so many babies that people couldn't raise them. And many of them were left in a crib alone much of the day.
Which is a horrible thing to do to a child.
It's a kind of a solitary confinement during that time when they're going to develop, they're going to learn some things, or they're not going to learn them, and it's going to be forever.
Yeah, my wife and I, when we were deciding whether to have children, saw some children in a children's home, in baskets, just lying there, and we thought, why would we have children? Now this was our point of view for us. Why would we have children when they're already here and nobody loves them? And they're just lying there. It wasn't that the people taking care of them didn't care for them. There just weren't enough people to do it. You've got to take a lot of time with the kid, an awful lot. and ring them, and swing them, and smile, and then they smile back. That's interesting. The smile back, and that's reinforcing for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although I don't have children, I've held nieces and nephews.
People like you are very valuable, because parents need help. It takes a village.
Once in a while, a little relief, yeah.
I was so fortunate in growing up with aunts and uncles who nurtured and cared for me. There was no way I could become a criminal.
I was going to say, well, my role was to ask dumb questions. I would ask, all right, what have you been learning in school and stuff like that, so they could tell me whatever was, whatever was on their mind. I tried to be a listening board. Sometimes
a child growing up cannot talk with the parents, but if there's another adult they can relate to
and have a conversation with.
I'm so glad that one of my good friends, Jonas Holman, is a grandfather to one of my granddaughters.
All right.
And he knows how to nurture. And I wish every child had someone like that. So what we're saying is love is something that has to be nurtured early. And even when we teach a child to care for even the toy it has, and for the little dog and the cat, learning to care for something and someone is learning eventually better to care. To care for something is to take care.
Yes, all right.
And then gradually, as they grow up, pass through the 2-year period, when they're discovering their independence.
They learn me, yes.
And that's good, you see. Then, after that, once they discover themselves, gradually they discover, if we're lucky, mother and father and brother and sister and neighbors are persons too. And then they can get the joy of the interaction. And I would see what you think of this. Maybe the best preparation emotionally and morally for a marriage, a good loving marriage, would be developing early in life good friendships. What do you think? Does that make any sense?
Why, I think so. Obviously, the person who doesn't connect isn't going to do so with friends as well. I can't help but think, as you say that, about the tragic young man in Arizona who shot the representative, who's alleged to have shot the representative. Yeah. I think he was friendless as well, and was groping for a way to have human interaction.
Yeah, that is so sad. It really is. So maybe part of a loving thing to do. When you think about it, a smile or a kind word, which is part of loving behavior, is kindness. You can sometimes have experienced that, and it will last maybe the rest of your life, just when you needed that kind word. And you never know. It's like sowing seed, and it grows somewhere and you don't even know it.
I can well imagine. I can think back, especially to some teachers in school who approached their subjects with genuine interest that affected me very greatly.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I admire great teachers like that.
Well, Joe, we're at the halfway point here. Could I get you to go through the break material, and we'll be bringing Larry in here as well. And it looks like you'll be able to take a caller right away.
Let's go. We got to go ahead with it. Have we got a caller coming?
Is the caller ready? Yeah, Joe, let's not interrupt them premature. Let's wait. I think they're processing. So if you can do the break here, that'll let me step out, and we'll bring Larry on.
Okay. Well, I just want to remind you,
all right,
if you're tuning in, this is sponsored by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. And we would like your feedback. It'd be useful to us as well as to the listeners. If you're calling, hang in there with us, be patient, and we want to talk with you. and hear what you have to say.
Hello, Joe.
Hello. Introduce yourself, will you, Larry?
I'm Larry Rhodes. I'll be with you in a second as soon as I get this mic on. There we go. Hopefully the sound test is still good. Okay.
Now, let me ask, is it possible to love someone you don't like? Oh, we've got a phone call, have we? Let's see what we got.
Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Surely can. Uh-huh.
Okay. This is Shara, and I wanted to ask a specific question. The word agape, of course, is a Greek word, and I find it interesting. I'm very aware of the fact, since my first husband was Greek, born and raised in Greece, that the phrase "I love you" in Greek is sagapo, which is based on that agape word. Uh-huh. So the real people in Greece, the human beings in that country, use that word not for the kind of elevated love that you're attributing to it, Joe, but more for the daily relationship and marital word. And sagapo, which has that agape in it, you can hear it, means "I love you" in Greek.
Yeah, that's 2,000 years later. The languages do develop, but love is a many-splendored thing, and that's we
very
use.
interesting.
In fact, we do the same thing. We use the word love, and then we spread it out.
Oh yeah, we can say I love a chocolate shake, or I love my dog, or I love my wife. It's the same word, but it has so many different meanings.
Yeah. We make a distinction. We devour ice cream. We don't devour people we love, not even emotionally. You were going to say something. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I've forgotten now.
Oh, okay.
I literally did just get in the studio, so I'm not sure what you've already covered, and I hope we don't cover the same thing again.
Oh, I don't think we will.
We are open. The lines are open at 215-2288. And
well, I'll sign off then, guys. Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Shara?
No, I was just fascinated that sagapo, which I know means "I love you" in Greek, is the root of your agape word.
Cool.
That's all. Good show, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, would you say love... Oh, I'll take that off. Would you think love has an intellectual aspect to it?
Well, sure. Matter of fact, you can love concepts. The concept of freedom, the concept of intelligence and clear thought. They have definite emotional connotations to it, too. And I do remember the question that you asked me when I first came in is, can you love somebody you don't like? And yes, there are several times that I didn't like my brothers at all.
Growing up,
But of course, I still loved them. They meant the world to me. But yeah, I think that's true. That could happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember once hearing a young man say, it's been years ago, "I love my mother, but I don't like her."
At this time.
Now he's older now. In fact, usually, I once told my class, this was in college, you might go home and try an experiment. Just sit down like two adults now and tell your parents how much they mean to you.
Really?
And it was interesting that when they would come back.
My father had a hard time with emotion and expressing his emotions and stuff. I can only remember like 2 times he ever told me he loved me. So those are very special times, and I'm glad they happened.
Yeah. I don't ever remember my father, come to think of it, saying he loved me, but it never occurred to me. He didn't.
That he didn't.
I mean, so that's what I mean by behavior. And I think I mentioned this on the program once. My brother broke his nose playing football. And I said to Jack, "Did you cry?" And he said, "No, but Dad did." Because he identified so much with his son. And part of love is identifying with the feelings of other people, which is not always easy to do.
Right. Now, I don't know if you've discussed it or not, but the religious people are always saying that God is love. Have you all talked about that already?
We hadn't said a word about that.
Okay. We already have a word for love. there's no reason to bring all the extra baggage of a godhood into it. If God is love, then I'm no longer an atheist, because I do believe in love.
Well, let's suppose you are a theist and you say God is love. Then by definition, you should be able to say you shouldn't ever not love yourself. Mm-hmm. You may not love some of your behavior.
Right.
But which brings up another question. Mm-hmm. What about loving your enemies? Love your neighbors yourself. What about loving your enemies? What do you think?
Well, I can love mankind as a whole, and I would think that sometimes when you're at war, you have enemies. I personally like to think I don't have enemies, but if a nation or a people were my enemies, I would still love mankind. I wouldn't feel real strong positive emotion against them, especially if I was the victim of some of their violence.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I think that it would be really hard to love your enemy, but you could love the concept of humans as redeemable and happily and
you
worthy of love.
Yeah, worthy of love. In other words, they're persons, and they've done you some terrible wrong things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you would wish that somehow this could be improved, and hope that they would see that. I mean, when you forgive someone, or being forgiven, is there has to be some recognition that some great harm has been done.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I have a problem with is loving a group of people. I mean, hating a group of people per se. In respect, love, both of those are earnable traits. In other words, when I meet somebody on the street, I give them a certain dose of respect because I don't know them at all. I don't know which way they're going to jump in conversation. I don't know if they're like a member of the KKK or what they do. But once they start talking and they tell me about themselves and what they believe in and what their love is, it helps to
I gotcha.
To love them then.
We got a call. Let's try.
Okay.
Hello. Have we got a call? Let's hear it. Yeah. Have you got a?
Welcome to Freethought Forum.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you speak up a little bit? We're having a little trouble hearing you.
I wondered what you thought about pertaining to love. It says love is a serious mental disease, and this comes from Plato.
Is that right? I can understand him saying something, or that some people would say something like that.
Okay. Let me deal with that. Mm-hmm. Would you like to say something else about that, or you won't?
Well, it's certainly been the source of a lot of mental disordered people doing terrible things in the name of love or crazy things. So maybe he has something there. I just wondered, poets write about it, plays have been done, novels have been done. So love may be a very serious mental disease, but it's also a wonderful, glorious feeling, and you're on top of the world when you have it. So maybe Plato, I don't know if he was speaking from a personal experience. I don't know his biography, but I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, let's deal with that. Thank you.
That is an interesting take. Thank you for your question.
Okay, that comes. Plato was there using the word Eros, and I think take literally the word disease is dis-ease. Mm-hmm. It puts you not at ease.
Right.
Is part of what he's saying. Mm-hmm. At this point, he's saying that love is passion, it's driving desire, and sometimes that can be enormously painful, especially when the desire
is unfulfilled.
And I think that's what he meant. And Shakespeare, in many of his plays, is developing the same theme. And if you're a mother and a father, you know that sometimes love can be enormously painful. Whenever one of your children is having problems or causing problems or in illness, then it hurts enormously. And so love is a risky thing, and that's why I think some people can't risk it too well, because it can be such a painful, disturbing, in that sense, putting us ill at ease at times. Thank you. That was a very
That was a good question.
A good point. That's the Eros.
Do you believe it's better to have loved and lost?
Sure.
Than never to have loved at all?
That's old Tennyson, and he was thinking, I think, of his brother-in-law. He had lost a very good brother-in-law, and he wrote it. Unlike most of us, Tennyson could express his feelings and his thoughts and his morality into wonderful poetry.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we think so much of the emotion of love is it brings people together. It's not generally a destructive force. It generally produces good fruit. But it can produce bad fruit as well, and it can be misunderstood. Dan Barker from the Freedom from Religion Foundation says, I'm sorry, to understand what love is, and that is one of the reasons I can never again be a Christian, is that love is not self-denial. Love is not blood and suffering. Love is not murdering your son to appease your vanity. Love is not hatred or wrath, consigning billions of people to eternal torture because they have offended your ego or disobeyed your rules. Love is not obedience, conformity, or submission. It is a counterfeit love that is contingent upon authority, punishment, or reward. True love is respect and admiration and compassion and kindness, freely given by a healthy and unafraid human being. That's Dan Barker, who used to be a preacher and then...
Yeah, and he's referring there to evangelical and fundamentalist Christianity. I know many Christians who simply don't believe in the eternal torture of most of the human race.
But he was in the fundamentalist camp for quite a while.
We've got a caller. Don't run away. Can you hear us? And can we hear you now?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Yes,
please go ahead, would you?
It occurs to me that we're living at a time when people tend to love principles better than people, better than other people. And it seems to me, I think it was Oscar Wilde who says that he liked people better than principles, and he liked people with no principles best of all. That's a little bit probably taking it too far, but it seems to me that some people let their principles get in the way of loving other people. In other words, if you hold to principles and love them so much that you can't see other people's stances or other people's ideas,
or you cut yourself off from
it
humanity.
seems like those principles, that idealism, that idealistic holding on to principles, or you might call it love of principles, gets in their way of loving people. What do you think about that?
Or love of ideology.
Yes.
I agree that it can cut you off from the rest of humanity just as much as hating people could, or hating humanity could.
Yeah, I heard an Anglican minister once say...
Other callers sort of pointed out a few minutes ago, love can drive you actually to kill people, and love of principles. And it occurs to me that in many times the caller made the good point that people often affiliated with religions or will kill people for the love of that religion. And as a matter of fact, the Bible says, and I think Larry, you pointed out that God is love, and that can be used two ways. Once I remember that was a bridge between me and my parents when they realized I didn't believe in God. I said though that I believed in love, and however, if God is love, how was he able to destroy masses of people who were on the other side, so to speak?
Even on his own side, if you remember, he had chosen people, and they were the first to feel his wrath in many, many occasions, where he even gave them diseases. I can't imagine anybody who loves their children to give them diseases and pestilence, famine, that type of thing. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. It seems like my idea of love would either be totally wrong, or God's idea of love would be totally wrong in that case.
Yeah.
Now, just as love often has various different meanings for people, I think you find people use the word God in a great number of ways. I've heard ministers who say that some versions of God are not God. In fact, one theologian spoke of the God above God. They were trying to argue. In fact, I heard a Methodist minister say, it isn't so important as to whether you believe in God. If you're a Christian, is what kind of God you believe in. And what he was trying to get at is your God's got to be moral. Right. Otherwise, it wouldn't be God.
Right. And I guess I'm one up on the Christian in that I can't believe that a God that they believe in would do such a thing. And it's much more logical to think that during this time the Jewish people were out there and they got a pestilence or they got a disease of some kind, and then the preacher among them said, "Look, see what God does to you when you don't obey." And basically what he's saying is, when you don't obey me.
Right.
So yes, I think I'm one up on the Christian because I don't believe God would do something like that if it were real.
Yeah, I have one other question I'd like to ask. Do you think that any love is truly selfless?
Okay, let's talk about that.
Purely selfish love. Selfless love.
No, I don't. I distinguish, and see what you think, between selfish and selfless. And I think what you're talking about is you're not in love, if you can pardon the pun, with either one of these. If you are selfless, then who are you?
Right. You don't have have anything to give.
And let's talk about self-denial. I think, to be fair to the Christians who've talked this way, and I would talk this way too, because I think it's good psychology, you deny some aspect of yourself for the sake of what? Another aspect of yourself or someone else whom you are closely related to who help enrich yourself. And all of us engage in some self-denial for the sake of the broader self. But the notion of selflessness seems to me to be, if you can pardon the pun, self-defeating.
Yeah.
What I was getting at, I guess, is is sort of a totally altruistic love, where the giver is expecting nothing in return whatsoever. Do you think that is possible?
Well, there have been several examples given to me in the past, and none of them really passed muster. The main one, I guess, was, let's say that you're out in a group of soldiers and someone throws a hand grenade in your foxhole, and you jump on it. Is that a truly selfless act? Is that altruistic? Well, to some extent it is. But the person who does the jumping wants something in return. He wants to further the mission that he is on. He wants to protect the people he is with. He wants to meet his maker. Who knows? But what I'm saying is, to be truly selfless, he would have had to have no motive at all. Yeah. And if he had no motive, he wouldn't jump.
That's a good point. If you're selfless, you can't even jump. You don't.
Right.
You can't even be motivated.
Right. You're apathetic.
You could say this, and see what you think, that his self broadened so that he could identify with these others. Then, in that sense, he had a kind of social immortality, not that he lives in other
that he
people.
Wanted the cause and his country to benefit from his action.
So I could distinguish between. I think you can make a distinction between selfishness and self-interest. I think those are two different things. And I distrust people who say they're going to help me and get absolutely nothing for it.
Right.
I mean, if they get at least pleasure in doing it, then I can. I mean,
you believe them. It's believable.
Yeah. You do things often for people because you get pleasure.
For pleasure, yes. Well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed your show very much. I appreciate your answers.
Well,
I'll hang up now and listen to your further comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a very good point.
That was a good question.
So, self-love, then, is the opposite of selfishness. Selfishness means, I think you could say, means I don't take you into consideration at all. And that's not self-love, because my love includes caring for you. I mean, what am I without friends and my family and even the people who I have related
society
to that
in general.
Yeah, society in general. Then I am literally nothing.
Throughout the history of mankind, as a world culture, we have made love out to be mysterious, complex, and difficult, and undefinable. It's the subject of endless poems and literary works. There's an enormous amount of material available out there about love, and a lot of it is contradictory. But the thing that gets me about it is that when the religious person says God is love, they're trying to usurp love. They're trying to take it over and claim it as their own.
Well, I don't think that's true of all religious people, but that's true.
Well, I agree. Let me just
go ahead and
fundamentalists. Let me say fundamentalists, or even the strategic religious leaders who are usually the ones who spot this type of thing.
Who use it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, spell it out, what you're talking about now.
Well, let's say anything that's basically good in society, a religious leader will come and say, well, that's part of my religion. Look at the Ten Commandments, don't kill your neighbor. We thought of that. Don't lie. No, we thought of that. That's Christianity, or that's Islam, or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever happens to be good, they have brought it in and claimed it as their own.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you say, well, I believe in love, oh, well, you're probably a good Christian.
Yeah, that is stealing. Because love developed long before Judaism or Christianity or Islam.
Right.
It developed because human beings working together in groups had to cooperate, had to take care of each other. Otherwise, they would not have survived.
No, they wouldn't.
And that's why it's important for us to remember love, from an evolutionary point of view or just a common sense point of view. Love is a survival value. It's crucial. It is essential.
Well, there was another piece of article, I'm not sure I can find it right now, but love, evolutionarily speaking, humans, we have offspring that requires an awful lot of attention for many years. Love is one of the evolutionary devices that would work in that favor to bind you to that child, bind you to your family unit, and bind you to your tribe or your social structure. It's very conducive to the positive results of your tribe survival.
Yeah. It's in some ways, love is not only essential, but is also it's a source of great ethics and the source of great immorality. Now, let me try to explain and see what you think. Love, in the sense of the source of morality, is the bonding together and cooperating together, and that's to get back to the principles and the rules that one of our callers, we do have to set up out of love certain rules and regulations, but those are born out of love, not to be in competition with love.
Right.
They are put there for the sake of helping us to love each other and respect each other.
Well, be careful. How'd they get there? They were put there?
They were put there by us.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
By society, by our love of love, our respect for love.
Yeah. They're like grammar rules. Nobody wrote a grammar book years ago, and then we started speaking grammatically.
No.
Rather, we started speaking in certain ways, and those were patterns, and then later they wrote the rules to describe the patterns. And if you want to communicate, you go by these rules, because that's what communication requires. Is that another phone call?
Well, he hasn't cleared it yet.
Okay.
Love is expressed when you give your attention, your time, your focus to someone. Webster defined attention as giving one's mind to something. And you think of it as you love a hobby, you love fishing, you love an activity, you give your mind and your time and a lot of your resources to that activity. And you can do it also to animate things like a pet, or and then your children, working on up the scale.
Yeah, we got another phone call.
Another phone call.
We're good. Can we hear from you?
Welcome to Freethought Forum. Do we have a name?
Can we hear from you? We have a caller?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, please.
So far, you haven't said anything about love and sex.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, it was an obvious question.
Sure.
That somebody's going to be thinking about, does free thought lead to free love?
Oh, no. Excuse me. We have pretty much the same strictures. Well, not quite as bad, I'm sure. But Freethought is as varied as the individuals in it. The one thing that we don't have is an invisible judge of eternal right and wrong telling us that we shouldn't do stuff. Generally, if it's within our ethical behavior, and usually we have pretty high standards, talking as a group, then if it's pleasurable, it doesn't harm anybody, I can only speak for myself, see any problem in expressing sexual love in any means that you need or want to.
You could argue this. Love or sex is not like tennis. You can go down the street and say, anybody want to play tennis?
Yeah.
You don't do this with sex.
No.
Sex has, for most of us, it has meaning. It's not simply a game of tennis or a game of cards. It's a human relationship, and that means commitment.
But we do have a call.
Yeah, we got another call. Go right ahead. We got another call. Please. Go.
Welcome.
Welcome. We got a caller. Let's hear it.
May we have your name, please?
My name is May.
Oh, go ahead, May, would you?
Do you have a question for us?
Well, the reason I called, I've been watching your program, and all of my life, as a small child, I'm not a small child now, I'm in my 60s, but all of my life I was from Kentucky, and we went to a Christian church, and it was like Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday night, and then after I got married, I got away from it a little bit. And now I know someone who believes like you do, and I'm listening more and more, but it's just, I'll just put it really plain. It's almost like I'm afraid to believe like you do, since it was preached into me that I'll go to hell.
Well, it is
don't believe
fear-based.
I was taught, and yet there's so many things that I have heard and have been said that lead me to believe that I was taught wrong.
Can I ask you what your religion is, or what you were raised in?
Pardon?
What religion were you raised in?
Christian church.
Baptist, Catholic?
She may not want to go that far.
It was called a Christian church, but mostly Baptist.
Okay, Protestant anyway.
Right.
Now, that is one of the problems with religion, and in our estimation, is it's fear-based. They do offer the carrot of heaven, but basically the thing that gets the people in the church is the stick of hell. And they rub it into you and burn it into you from the earliest age. It's one of the reasons that I have a real problem with hell houses and even Sunday school, where the preacher is hell and brimstone and hellfire preacher, because he will sell it. I mean, he will sell it to kids, defenseless kids.
It is marketing. Now, suppose you've got a whole warehouse of their version of salvation. Well, how are you going to create a demand for all that salvation they got?
Right.
Well, you got to create hell.
Yeah.
Now, I
when you're 10 years old and you're told, you're burning hellfire, it just scares you to death.
It scares the BGBs. They want it. And
it takes a while to get over. I have to tell you. There's a lot of people. Put up the societies if you don't mind. We're going to have
I beg your pardon?
These are clubs that we currently have in Knoxville that you might be interested in looking up on the web. We're going to have to close off of the phone call now because we've got about 35 seconds.
All right, thanks for talking to me.
Well, thank you.
But check out these organizations, go to their websites, and do some reading there if you like.
Okay.
And call us again.
Thank you very much.
Right. You can email us. You can close it off if you want.
Okay.
You can email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. You can see the email address there above me. And you can call this station to purchase a DVD of past and current shows at Freethought Forum. My name is Larry Rhodes, and this has been Freethought Forum.
And I'm Joe Barnhart, and be with us next week.